Welcome to Satsang. You can actually इसको बंद कर दीजिएगा ये वाला जो मेरे ऊपर है वाला हाँ कोई जरूरी नहीं है हाँ बस thanks. The weather is so beautiful tonight. So beautiful. Such a beautiful day of the power of Akash Ganga flowing onto us from the heavenly realms. We'll start our satsang as always with a question that's come in advance, and then any questions that are here, I'm happy to take them. We know what the benefits are of a spiritual life. But can you share your thoughts on the challenges of a spiritual life? The challenges of a spiritual life. Whatever you choose to focus your life on, there are going to be challenges. If you've decided to live a very material focused life, and your singular highest goal is you want to become a multimillionaire or even a billionaire, well, the challenges that you're going to face are things like you've only got 24 hours in a day. How are you going to make that much money that fast? You'll have challenges in business. You'll have challenge with competitors. You'll have you'll have all kinds of challenges. If you decide that your highest goal in life is to lead a political movement, well, you're going to have your own set of challenges, right? Life in politics is not an easy life. You'll have all sorts of challenges that'll arise from within your party, from other parties, from getting finances, etc. When we choose to lead a spiritual life, when we choose to make spirituality the highest goal, the challenges that arise are somewhat different. Because they're not challenges that are unique to that path, meaning spirituality does not bring its own challenges. If my goal is just to get rich, there's very specific challenges associated with getting rich. If my goal is to become a big political leader, there are certain challenges associated specifically with that. That if I didn't have an interest in money or politics, I would not have those challenges. But spirituality does not present any unique challenges, because the challenges that we face living a spiritual life, really, from what I've seen, are just staying focused on it. Remembering that you're living a spiritual life. Not getting distracted into these ideas that money or power or fame or this or that are your goals. The challenges of the spiritual life are staying strong in it, of avoiding distraction, avoiding temptation. The the opportunities that we face, the things that seem difficult. Well, these are things that regardless of what you think your life is for, ultimately you're going to have to face these anyway, whether in this life or next life. Because the spiritual life is bringing you the true life. Your highest, truest, fullest, most eternal nature is not a multimillionaire or a billionaire. Even if you have, at a certain moment of time, $1 billion, nonetheless, that is still not your highest, truest, eternal nature. Your highest, truest, eternal nature is not being a top political leader, even if you achieve that for a period of time. Even during that period of time, it's still not your highest, truest nature. Your highest, truest, fullest nature is spirit, consciousness, divinity. And so whatever you dedicate your life to, whether it's business, whether it's politics, whether it's entertainment, whether it's art, whether it's teaching, whether it's technology, there's dozens and dozens of things people dedicate their lives to, all of which are wonderful in their own way. But in order for life on any level to actually be successful, we still have to have the spiritual life. And there's nothing about a spiritual life that says, oh, you can't be in business, oh, you can't be in politics, oh, you can't do this. Of course you can. In fact, our scriptures are full with not only examples, but with instructions to live in the world, to do our duty. Some people's duty is here in business, some is here in politics, some is here in art, some is here in teaching, some is here in whatever it may be. But all of us, at the deepest, corest level, have the responsibility to our highest dharma, which is to recognize the truth of who we are and realize that. So, the challenge of the spiritual life is keeping yourself from getting distracted off it. The challenge is finding and knowing finding and knowing your true self in the midst of all of the pulls in so many directions, in the midst of all of these tempting titles and roles. So for example, let's say I'm the one with the multi-millions or the billions. Well, that still is not who I am. But it's so tempting to then start to identify as the rich one, the powerful one, the millionaire, the billionaire. And the challenge of living a spiritual life is realizing, regardless of what our external role that we are playing, whatever particular vehicle we are being here on earth, whatever our particular karmic journey might be, that is not who I am. And not getting lost in identifications and titles and roles. The rich one, the poor one, the successful one, the failing one, the old one, the young one, the beautiful one, the not so beautiful one. all depending on just our own self-identifications. But that's a challenge for every one of us. If you want to actually live and know who you are. So the biggest challenge facing us all, actually it seems, is staying grounded on the spiritual path. Even as we fulfill different roles and responsibilities and duties and karmic packages. Staying anchored and grounded in knowing, I am spirit in a human incarnation that is playing the role of a policeman. Or I am spirit in a human incarnation playing the role of a teacher. Or I am spirit in a human incarnation playing the role of a CEO of a company. But of constantly remembering that I am spirit in a human form playing this role. And the more that we can remember that throughout the day, because the role of course changes. I may be playing the role of CEO of a company sometimes, and then I come home, and much more important than my role as CEO of the company now is my role as husband or father or son or brother. So I'm spirit in a human incarnation playing the role of this other spirit in a human incarnation's brother or husband or father. And just that constant reminder of, oh yeah, okay, this is my role. This is my duty of the moment. Dharma of this particular incarnation or this particular scene in the act of this particular life. But just to keep remembering, I am spirit in a human incarnation playing this role. And whatever the role may be, that is still your greatest challenge, is remembering that. Challenges in business, challenges in politics, challenges all over. Those are the superficial level challenges. They're still important. I mean, Arjuna had the challenge of stringing the bow in the right way, aiming it, firing it. And it was important that he fulfill those challenges well. But ultimately, the highest challenge was remembering who he was in all of that. So it doesn't mean that we don't take the challenge in our roles seriously. We do. But we don't allow ourselves to get so absorbed in them that we forget who we are. And I'd say that's the greatest opportunity. You can think of it as a challenge, but it's nicer to think of it as an opportunity in all of our lives. Are there any questions here? Yeah.
Namaste Mataji. What if there is self-realization, which is one of the rarest events to happen? So if then how would that entity decide like what action he needs to do? Because if there's some kind of self-realization, then you won't be motivated to do any action because you know that action doesn't make any sense. Like it's kind of just absorb in the environment. And so what exactly, like if there is some self-realization, then what exactly that entity decide, like what he needs to or she needs to do, you know?
Sure. First of all, it's critical to realize that whether we call it self-realization, God-realization, enlightenment, awakening, nirvana, whatever word we may use, there's always action. And whether you look at the lives of Bhagwan Krishna, Bhagwan Ram, whether you look at the life of Bodh Bhagwan, we look at really not just self-realized humans who came in as part of their own karmic journey, but managed at some point during the human incarnation, the birth that they took due to past karma. But during their life, they managed to free themselves. If instead of even just looking at that level of it, we actually look at it as the divine beings who have come on earth. Every one of them is engaged in action. And by action, I don't just mean tending a garden. Right? If you look at the life of Bhagwan Krishna, you look at the life of Bhagwan Ram. Again, you look at the life of the Buddha, you look at any whether you say avatar, whether you say, whatever words you use for the divine beings who have come onto earth, not because they had to, not because they were stuck with karma, not who somehow managed to free themselves of these tethers throughout their life, but actually who came on earth already enlightened, divine. Even they acted. And then if you look at the beautiful masters who we've seen in our lifetime or in our recent history, sages, saints, yogis, they're all acting. Every one of them is engaged in action. And the reason for that is that you can't, as Bhagwan Krishna explained very clearly, you actually can't avoid action. I mean, if I say, okay, I'm self-realized, right, I'm done. Enlightenment ho gaya, awakening ho gaya, I'm done. Ab main kuch nahi karungi. Not going to do anything. No more action. I'm just going to sit here. Now, first of all, even as I'm sitting here, there's action happening. There's thoughts happening, which are creating a ripple impact, sending out all kinds of vibrations into the atmosphere. There's action happening every time I eat, every time I drink, every time I walk. In and of itself, that is an action. But on a more critical level, if I say I'm not going to engage in action anymore, well, what about all of those people who I could have helped, who I had the capacity to help, but I decided not to? Because I decided that being self-realized meant that I was sort of exempt from fulfilling my duty here on earth. Well, that's also action. There's two types of action. Acts of commission, meaning things I do, actions I actually commit. I've done it. And acts of omission. Acts that I could have done and I didn't do them. Someone was hungry, I didn't feed them. I had the capacity to feed them. I knew they were hungry. And I didn't feed them. That's an action. Do not kid yourself that you somehow are absolved from action when one is realized. In fact, what I've seen in my 25 plus years in India is the more connected to the divine one is, the more realized one is, the more they serve. It's how this country is running. It's the saints, it's the sages, it's the spiritual beings running ashrams, running foundations that run schools, that run hospitals, that run disaster relief. Take any natural disaster, a tsunami, an earthquake, a flood. Who are the first responders on site? Your religious organizations. And this is true, by the way, not only in India. This is true all over the world. Like, ask anybody at the United Nations who first responders in times of disaster are. Everyone knows. It's the faith organizations, the religious organizations. Everybody else comes in afterwards. Because they are the ones who immediately are there. There's no question of, is it in our budget? Okay, let us sit and make a plan and, go through 10 drafts of a plan, and finally a few months from now we'll implement it. They're the ones who it's just right now. In fact, they say, if you go to the mandir, you see the images of the divine. So frequently, whether you're seeing Radha Krishna, whether you're seeing Ram Parivar, whatever you're seeing, Lakshmi Narayan, they're standing. They're standing. And I've heard it said many times, the reason that God is standing is because He's always ready. Reminds us, always be ready. Anytime, anything, anywhere, always ready. So, it doesn't mean you don't act. What it means is, number one, you don't identify as the doer. So it's not a matter of, I am the great philanthropist, I am the humanitarian, and okay, gather around, we're going to have a meeting about what we as the ones who have a lot are going to do for those pitiable ones who have nothing. Right? It's not that. It's not this identification as the doer. It's not the identification as the one who is even able to make things happen. It's a surrendering of the doing to the divine. It is an offering of who you are, what you have to the divine to flow through you. When we do our yagna ceremony and we place the ahuti in the fire, the seeds in the fire, it's this beautiful symbol of God. I mean, the fire is the symbol of the divine, right? The divine purifier. The divine fire. We are offering into the divine. All of us. Ahuti after ahuti after ahuti. Take it all. Take it all. Not for me, but for you. Not for me, but for you. So the self-realized one is the one who acts but not as the doer. There's no sense of doership, which means A, there's no ego or arrogance. But B, there's also no attachment. So it's not a sense of I've done this, therefore it better work. Or I've done this, therefore you better appreciate it or use it. There's no attachment to it. It's a flow, it's action that flows naturally. There's a lot of beautiful similes and metaphors that have been given. I'll just throw a few out, see what appeals to you. But it's things like, you give the way that a flower gives its fragrance, even to the bottom of the shoe that has stepped upon it. You give like the branches of a fruit tree give their fruit. You give like the sun gives its light, gives its warmth, like the river gives her water. A constant flow, constant action, but not with attachment, either to what happens or to the role as the one who did it. I mean, you never see Ganga, rising up next to a beautiful, fertile field of wheat crops, saying, मैं नहीं होती तो कोई भी गेहूं नहीं होता, मैंने किया मेरे जल से. Never. She irrigates and flows, आगे बढ़ते. And that's how the action is done. It's interesting on a personal level, because that's how Pujya Swamiji works. It's how I've seen him for 25 years. It's just whatever is needed, he does it and he moves on. He does it and moves on, does it and moves on. And in recent years, as we've been working with the United Nations and with other organizations, they talk about something called monitoring and evaluation, M&E. And they want facts and figures and statistics and whatnot. And I remember the first time someone asked us that. And we were like, well, didn't you, measure it? And we were like, well, no, because, which energy do you take to leave behind on something that you've already done, rather than take it forward to be able to do more in the future? Like, are we going to stay back and count those we fed in the tsunami? Or are we going to move forward and start feeding others or building schools for others? How do you allocate resources away from doing the work that needs to be done so that you can collect numbers about the work you've already done? Now, obviously, in those sorts of partnerships, you don't have a choice. You have to, because they want it. But I mention it because it's a way of working when you're dealing with an enlightened master, a realized being, for whom it's not about what did I do. It's not about what were my achievements. Oh, did I feed more than you fed? Oh, did we make more houses than you made? Oh, does that make us the #1 humanitarian organization? It's not about any of that. It's about you just do what you can with what God has given you. And when it's done, you move on and then you do more. So there's always action. But it's action, well, let me step back. The renunciation, when people think about renunciation, it's not a renunciation of the action. It's a renunciation of the attachment to the doer of the action and the results of the action. That's the renunciation. The action doesn't stop. But the mind going, oh my God, my action better be better than anybody else's action. I better get the results that I want from this action. That stops. Does that make sense? And that's how, when you say, how do they decide? Well, they don't decide. That which flows through is that which flows through. It's just a faith. You know, it's like Ganga flows where the riverbed is laid. If you started, digging a canal, as they've, done for a variety of reasons, alongside Ganga, well, you can divert water. She'll flow into it. Create a riverbed, the water's going to flow. Because her job is not to stand there and go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, which way? Right? She's flowing. She's flowing into the riverbed. And in the same way, the self-realized being acts propelled by the same force, that same divine force that propels Ganga flowing through her riverbeds. It's not a force that gets questioned, but it's also not a force that you take any credit for or identify as, I did it. You're just part of the divine flow here on earth. Wonderful. Does anyone else have any questions? Yes.
Namaste. Self-realization, is it like a goal or a moment or a stage that we reach, or is it something like different degrees of vibration that we keep reaching or experiencing in our state of consciousness and being?
Yes. It's all of those. It's all of it. Is self-realization a stage, a goal, somewhere we reach, a continually expanding vibration in our consciousness? It's all of that. It has to begin as a goal, because unfortunately, part of the package deal of being human is that our minds are very unanchored, shall we say. They are constantly moving around, constantly changing, constantly getting attached, hooked into sensations, perceptions, desires, aversions, Maya, illusion, all of it. And so, unless you are a very rare being for whom just suddenly, sort of out of the blue, it happens, for most, it has to be a conscious goal that we say, I'm going to dedicate myself to my spiritual practice. And you can call it self-realization, you can call it enlightenment, you can call it awakening. It doesn't matter. You can call it just knowing the highest truth. But it does require a conscious mindset, because we cannot move simultaneously in two different directions. So if my mind is moving in a direction of external achievement, it's not going to simultaneously be able to move in the direction of internal awareness. So I need to consciously decide, what's my focus? Now again, of course, it doesn't mean that you can't simultaneously be succeeding externally. You can, of course. It's all about, though, what is really the focus in my mind? If the mind is on the spiritual practice, sure, who knows, maybe the flow flows through you in a way that it gets marked as success in a variety of different ways. Maybe that happens. Maybe it flows through in a different way. But your conscious decision needs to be, I am on a spiritual path. Because there's really two ways of looking at the world, the spiritual and the material. And of course, we flow from one to another. I have a spiritual way of looking at the world, and yet I try to make sure to recognize pillars and posts and steps and things so you don't knock them over and trip and fall and hurt other people. So you're aware of the material world, of course, but the focus is on the spiritual perspective of recognizing that, yes, there is matter, and yet really what there is space and energy. So once you've had that goal, you've decided this is going to be that lifetime. God knows how many lifetimes I've already lived. This is going to be the one. This is going to be the one I'm finally going to experience it. And so you commit yourself to it. And then you engage in practices, meditation, prayer, seva, yoga, japa, whatever else your path may include, that bring you closer to that. You avoid situations, places, people, to the extent possible, that pull you out of that pull you more and more into Maya, into illusion, into a world of desires and aversions, into a world where your identity and success are based on the money in your bank account or the size of your house or your car, or any aspect of this identity. And slowly, 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 your inner vibrational energy starts to change. And you feel it shift inside. And as you feel that happening, yes, it can be a state, especially in the beginning where we change states. We have the opportunity to experience it. Maybe it's just a split second. We touch it for a moment. Maybe then the moments get longer. So the state expands. And then sometimes it feels like a place rather than just a state, where the entire world you inhabit is a place of realization. So it's no longer about the flittering of the mind stuff, but it becomes much more a space you live in, a place you inhabit. And the vibrations continue to shift. So it's all of those things. it's definitely not a fixed point, as in, okay, now I'm done. You know, like at a carnival, you throw the ring and it lands on the thing and the bell goes bing and you get the stuffed elephant. It's not like that. Then you go home with your stuffed elephant, you're done, carnival was a success. It's not like that. But there certainly are moments along the way where there's an inner experience of that bing bell. Not with the stuffed elephant, but with the just moment of ah, wow, ah. And then it just keeps getting richer and getting deeper and getting more as we continue to expand and expand and expand. Because the truth is, where we're ultimately going is the experience of our absolute oneness with the divine. That experience of infinity, divinity, which has no border, it has no boundary, there is no end. You can't say, infinity, done, yeah, got it. There is no place that infinity ends. There is no place divinity ends. So as you start to touch it, it just continues to keep expanding. But you got to have the goal first. Because it's all about our choices and our decisions of where we're going to put our attention and our intention and our energy. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evenings. And a beautiful morning or day to our family joining us from all over the world. And I look so forward to being together with you all tomorrow. And so much love to you all.